Welcome to our investigation of standards. We all know them, we all begrudgingly try to follow them, we all unknowingly deal with standards every day that we teach. They are the benchmarks that measure your success as a teacher and your students' success as learners. Or do they? How do standards treat writing as a subject? What kinds of writing are taught and what tasks are asked of students? As the nation begins to incorporate the Common Core standards, we chose to look into Virginia English Standards of Learning compared with the Common Core standards. It is important to note that while the Common Core standards are starting to become more common across every state, Virginia has yet to adopt these standards. Virginia's Department of Education is attempting to incorporate the Common Core standards into their own standards of learning in hopes to surpass the expectations of the Common Core. The Common Core standards overlap with Virginia's English Standards of Learning, but are more specific and detailed as to what is expected of students throughout the year. Both sets of standards are rigorous and have high expectations for students to achieve. Virginia's writing standards for first grade students appear to be rather limiting, but have some interesting aspects. They begin with their own summary of the goals for the year. Some defining features in the summary include the infusion of reading and writing together. The standards also explicitly state students will write every day. Writing in grade 1 is a process of phonological building, learning the alphabetic principle, and memorizing sight words. All of these will be used, according to Virginia standards, for students to write for real purposes, writing things such as letters, notes, signs, stories, and labels. After the short introduction, the standards are broken into 3 strands: print, communication, and technology. The print section focuses on the alphabetic principle, that all sounds in English have corresponding graphic representation. The essential skills it points out are things like pencil grip, basic sentence convictions, and knowledge of all lower and uppercase letters and their formations. The focus on handwriting is genuinely pushed in this section, something our reading in Graves' text would like to downplay. Virginia standards do focus heavily on handwriting, but call for explicit and direct instruction to form letters, something we believe many teachers do not implement, but simply assume students' motor skills will develop over time. The communication section has 7 subsections, but only 2 have to do with student ideas. From what we have studied in our course so far, one can see that the ideas are the most important aspect to early student writing. Allowing students to pick their own topics and write freely is invaluable to creating voice and confidence with young writers, as Emig and Graves both point out. This section deals more with the purpose of writing, in that writing is used for a variety of purposes like storytelling, informing others, labeling, making lists, and reporting. Much of the section, however, does not focus on these ideas, but rather on conventions again. Out of the 14 essential skills, only 2 of them regard ideas, while the rest are about conventions of capitalizations, spacing, and end marks. This section also shortly describes sharing work with others, but provides no essential guidelines for sharing work. As we have read in Dyson's work, sharing is essential for young writers to navigate their social worlds, as they use text to manipulate and make connections with others in their classroom world. The final technology section is vague. It states students will use available technology for reading and writing, which leaves a lot to be desired. What is available at each school? This section can be more useful as a publishing section, using technology, like in Emig's book, to bind books and create student-made libraries. Of particular interest in all strands is the teacher notes section, which explains the standards and lays out explicitly what the teacher needs to do to achieve success in the standard. As one can see, these standards focus highly on conventions of writing, rather than on the ideas and social aspects of writing. While the conventions are important for young learners, perhaps the intense focus from the Virginia standards is creating a high-stakes writing environment in which students seldom take risks and succeed. The goals of the Common Core initiative are for students to show independence, develop content knowledge, adjust communication depending on audience, task, purpose, and discipline, be active learners and listeners, value evidence and text, use technology to enhance writing and reading, and understand different cultures and perspectives. The Common Core divides itself into 3 sections, like Virginia standards, but shares little other than this division. The 3 sections are purposes of writing, production and distribution of writing, and research to build and present knowledge through writing. The section on purposes explains the types of writing grade 1 students will do. This section coincides with Virginia's section on communication, in that it presents persuasive, compare and contrast, reports, and narratives. The section on production and distribution coincides with Graves' writing because it heavily focuses on conferencing and focusing on ideas, not conventions. In fact, conventions are not mentioned at all in the writing section of the Common Core, but rather in another section called Language Conventions. And I quote, "The inclusion of language standards in their own strand should not be taken as an indication that skills related to conventions, effective language use, and vocabulary are unimportant to reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Indeed, they are inseparable from such contexts." That's to say, while all the subjects are in different sections, all of them are connected. Oddly enough, the Common Core does not incorporate reading and writing together until the 4th grade. The Virginia standards state clearly that reading and writing will be done from grade 1 together. The Common Core was set up to guide states. They are mutable for each classroom. Virginia standards are much more rigid. Standards can seem like a tricky burden to many teachers, especially with high-stakes testing, and that they have the potential to turn teaching into a checklist rather than a dialogue, which we have learned is such an important aspect of teaching writing. Virginia writing standards seem to risk that more than the Common Core, which works on giving guidelines, not teacher directives. After studying these standards in depth, we have come to believe that standards are merely a balancing act between checklist and dialogue. Dialogue should always win out.